Hello and welcome to the President's Podcast right here on the record with the Ohio Senate. The views the news excludes. I'm John Fortney, the Director of Communication with the Republican Caucus in the Senate, the Majority Caucus in the Ohio Senate. Happy to have on the program today, first-time guest, State Senator Tim Schaffer, Republican from Lancaster, Ohio. And we are coming to you from really a gem in his district that is just chock full of Ohio history. This is the Sherman House, which Senator Schaffer is the home of.
Yes, General William Tecumseh Sherman, who is known to have pretty much ended the Civil War, saved the North through his march through the South, march to the sea, as we know it. And in this Sherman House, as we call it, as you ably noted it, is full of mementos from General Sherman's life, his career, pictures, all kinds of mementos from his life, historical artifacts from the Civil War. What an incredible place to visit.
Oh, it is amazing. And by the way, if you have never been to Lancaster, great place to come. It's in Fairfield County, just south of Franklin County in the general Columbus area. But it has everything, rural area, lots of farmland, but all of this history right here in the birthplace. This is where he grew up, General Sherman. And by the way, if you are interested in taking a tour, you can go to shermanhouse.org. They do tours Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and it starts at noon, and then every hour on the hour. And the last tour starts at 3 o'clock. It's on the National Register of Historic Places, and in fact, the curators here were able to acquire maybe I would even argue, the most important piece that they have had practically in the history of this home here just recently, and they had to do it through an auction. What did they pick up?
Absolutely. General Sherman's battle sword, which we're looking at right now, came up to auction. The family decided to auction it off, and it was quite an aggressive auction. There were a lot of historians and history buffs throughout the world, not just Ohio or United States or North America, but throughout the world, who weighed in on that auction, and we got it. And it was a pretty sum, but we were able to cobble together, the House staff here was able to cobble together the donors and the supporters to be able to beat a lot of those other history buffs throughout the world to bring General Sherman's sword home to the Sherman House in Lancaster, Ohio. We're very proud of that.
Yeah, and you love talking about the history of not only the Sherman House, but just even a couple doors down. What was found in that home?
Yeah, absolutely. We still have a private residence here where the Sherman kids actually grew up in, and there is actually it appears to be a self-portrait of General Sherman on the wall. So it is amazing what you'll find in these historic houses that are approaching 200 some years old, where these famous American leaders, United States citizens grew up. And you just never know when you start peeling wallpaper off or whatever renovations you're doing, what you'll find.
You know, downtown Lancaster, I think, has done a pretty nice job in doing what a lot of the older small towns around Ohio, whether it's Marietta, whatever it may be, really renovating their downtowns and focusing on the historic part. It is a great tourist attraction.
It really is. We have four museums downtown here in Lancaster, all within a block of each other, each with different kinds of displays. Obviously, the Sherman House here is focused on General Sherman's life and the Civil War tenure, his time as general, and throughout his career. But you'll find a lot of other things as well throughout the downtown area. And there's been a lot of private investment, which is wonderful because it has preserved these grand mansions from 200 years ago. And as you stroll through what we call Square 13, which is the block just behind us here, behind the Sherman House, as you walk Square 13, you're actually transported back 150, 200 years ago to life as it was then in early America. And this was the frontier. The actual forest was about a block south of us here. So Lancaster at that time, 200 years ago, was really still the frontier. And it's amazing that you see this beautiful restored downtown now great place to have fun and learn some things about Ohio and American history.
Yeah, we talk about Ohio being Marietta being the first settlement of the Northwest Territory, and then how Ohio actually expanded from right there along the Ohio River and the Muskingum River through the Ohio Company.
Exactly.
And George Washington expanded west into what is now Fairfield County and then became a state in 1803. So you were talking about private investments, very important, but also having the backing of the state of Ohio in public investment. I know you've worked hard to secure funding through the state capital budgets, the past several capital budgets for places like the Sherman House. And in the most recent capital budget, which, as we talked in a prior podcast about, there was an additional fund that came with a different set of criteria called the OTSCIF, the One-Time Strategic Community Investment Fund, an additional $717 million. And you were able to capture $30 million for your Senate district. How important is the capital budget to your district?
It's so important that oftentimes we tend not to pay for the whole projects anywhere where we put state money in, but it's oftentimes the last bit of money that makes a project go. So when you have a place like the Sherman House or any of our other gems of history or gems of industry or industrial might, things that educate our kids today, it's sometimes the last few thousand or $10,000 or $20,000 that really makes the project go, and we save that structure, we save that building, we save that display. And that's what's so exciting about being in the legislature is you can participate in not only learning about these places, but helping save them.
Well, also, there is a lot of volunteer effort, whether people come and volunteer just their time or they volunteer with their wallet to put some of these projects together to preserve the history or to preserve some of the services of downtowns. One of the projects that you were able to capture for Perry County, which is you have in part of Perry County in your district, was the volunteer fire department in Somerset. How important was that project?
Yeah, and a lot of these projects we help out with really affect the health, safety, and welfare of the public and of our constituents. And this is a case in point. It's a volunteer fire department, all volunteer fire department, and it's a growing part of Perry County. So you have kind of that collision of needs where it's growing, but yet it's still a volunteer department. They needed our help. And so we were able to do over $1 million to the Reading Township Volunteer Fire Department in Somerset. And I'm very proud about that because when you're talking about volunteer firefighters, these are men and women who give their time, and they have, in many cases, paid their own education to become a firefighter, a medic, paramedic, whatever, and they've gotten their own certifications. And so I think it's incumbent upon us to reflect that dedication back and help them acquire equipment, engines, medic units, help with the building when fire department buildings, the structures sometimes age and technology moves on. We need to make sure that that community moves on with technology, and the state of Ohio can help with that.
And vital for response times. So
Absolutely.
You're not counting on the next county over, whether it's an EMS run or it's a fire.
Right.
Absolutely. Also, you were proud to get more than $500,000 for the YMCA in Lancaster because pools are so critical, especially you think about summertime, and it's amazing when you think about pools that are very much on the borderline of closing during the summertime and what that does to families and children who you would rather have at the pool than being out doing who knows what, right? Yeah.
Yeah, the YMCA in Fairfield County is very, very popular, and it's a well-run nonprofit organization with a great mission, of course. And what they found is after a few decades of this massive Olympic-sized pool in the building, and this was all an education for me too. I had to learn about this from the YMCA staff. It's very caustic to the structure of the building and to the air conditioning, the HVAC system, which evacuate. Yeah, you got to get that humidity out of the building. This is all very costly equipment, so that's what this grant will go for, is to help replace that equipment and give that pool another 30, 50 years.
Fantastic. And then moving over to Licking County, Buckeye Lake It is a destination point.
Absolutely.
All spring,
Absolutely.
all the way through the fall. There was a serious renovation of the dam there a few years
Yes.
ago. I remember that. We covered that. But you were able to acquire and secure $11 million of this one-time strategic community investment funding through the OTSCIF for Buckeye Lake, North Shore Park, and Pier. I mean, that has to be like one of the pinnacle projects that you worked on.
Well, it's a very important project because for the state's first state park, the local leadership has envisioned this pier structure, which is going to be a fantastic focal point for tourists. And what we're seeing is as Buckeye Lake develops and improves, and the dam improvement, the dam fix has been a wonderful start to all this process. We're attracting people from all over the country and North America to Buckeye Lake and to Central Ohio and to Ohio. It is truly a gem state park for the state of Ohio. And so this pier structure, when it goes in, it's going to have a number of attractions for families. It's going to be beautiful. We're hoping it's going to have docks associated with it so that you'll be able to dock your boat at a public dock and be able to get out and walk around and experience the park in general. So it's a wonderful neighborhood. It's a wonderful community. So this pier is going to add tremendously to that environment.
Also, Memorial Health Systems Education and Events Center, $3 million there in Licking County for that project. Healthcare is, listen, if you have to go 2 or 3 counties or drive 90 minutes for the type of healthcare that you require, that's an issue.
It certainly is.
A lot of people just can't afford to do that.
It certainly is. And the $3 million that we were able to secure for Licking Memorial Hospital or Licking Memorial Health Systems is going to be really important for their professional training, and places where they can, because right now they have to go off-site for a lot of this training and a lot of these facilities. So we're going to have that right there in Newark and to service the people of Licking County and the whole surrounding area. It's going to be a great project. And that's another example where the $3 million, the state legislature, with the governor's help by signing the bill, is going to help with the project. Not paying for the whole thing, but we're going to help. And that $3 million was a real critical cog in that whole system that project is going to be able to go forward.
And again, we want to reiterate that this isn't paying for the whole project. And these types of projects and the organizations that apply for this funding, whether it was the special one-time funding or the specific bond funding of a traditional capital budget, they have to meet very stringent and strict criteria to even qualify.
Absolutely.
And you have to go over all of that with the submissions. Senator Dolan, who's the chairman of the Finance Committee and was on a podcast with us, a President's Podcast, approximately 2 weeks ago, I asked him about overall, how many projects submitted a plan for just the $717 million of the $4.2 billion that was available? He said there were $4 billion worth of projects submitted just for the $717 million fund. So you really have to do some convincing, don't you? I mean, you work very hard to try
Absolutely.
to secure $30 million.
Absolutely.
You advocate on behalf of your district.
What we tell all of our community organizations and local governments is you've got to give us the data, you got to give us the information to be able to sell your project. Because if I don't have that information, then the leadership of the Senate and the House and the governor aren't going to go with it. So hats off to our local community organizations and local governments for doing a fantastic job of planning these things out, getting us architectural drawings. That's one thing I always ask for is, if this is a legitimate, serious project, show me your architectural drawings. And the vast majority hand them right over to you. They're already starting. They've already started on the project, which tells me it's a serious project.
Right. One of the last projects, of which there are many, as we talked about the $30 million that you were able to secure, in Licking County, Buckeye Valley Family YMCA Pataskala Child Care Center, $200,000. Child care, key issue right now.
You bet.
As people go back to work 4 years after the pandemic, well, really 3.5 when you think about the lasting effects into 2021.
Absolutely. And this is going to be a very short commuting distance to that little manufacturing plant in northwest Licking County called Intel. And so childcare is going to be very important for Intel and all the other supplier companies and all the other, and it's not just Intel, but there are a lot of other high-tech companies employing hundreds and 1,000 or more people that are moving in. they're going to want childcare, and they need childcare. And so these companies, when they see the talent that they need to bring in, sometimes very specific educational and professional talent, that talent is often going to ask about childcare resources, as well as recreational and physical fitness resources like the YMCA can provide. But childcare is absolutely critical.
Yeah, and the Intel announcement a couple years ago with the two fabricating operations, one in New Albany and the other, I'm trying to think the specific spot, but in your district basically. And then just a few weeks ago, there was another announcement. I think Google was making an expansion in the district. What is the overall economic landscape then, do you think, when these major projects come in? And obviously you're talking about 3,000 construction jobs, probably close to the same amount when it comes to full-time employees, and then all of the spin-off economic development and vertical integration. What is the overall economic picture for your district in Fairfield, Licking, and part of Perry County?
The overall economic picture is phenomenal. Truly. I mean, in this economic environment, anybody that can work and wants to work and needs to work can find work. Immediately, like yesterday. And what we're going to end up with as soon as these plants, I mean, some of them, the smaller ones, are opening up already, but as soon as Intel opens up and ramps up, you're going to see a increasing demand for skilled positions. My big concern was, do we have the people? Do we have the people with the right science degrees, the engineering degrees, or whatever technical competency they need? And our universities all throughout Ohio, but particularly Central Ohio, are really responding to that challenge. And Intel is supporting them in that. They're helping provide funding to ramp up some of these academic programs to make sure that they have the people to be able to be available to come in and start manufacturing the chips.
And this also really starts, too, when you talk about qualified workforce. You can have it at the university level, at two-year community college level,
Absolutely.
Which certainly is really getting a lot of attention now. But doesn't it also have to start somewhere in the K through 12 level with STEM? And what's your opinion of where things are right now, K through 12, just speaking specifically in your district?
Well, it's interesting to see, too, that the schools, our K through 12 public schools, are responding tremendously as well. And if you go tour some of those schools or even drive by the buildings, drive by the football fields, you're going to see Intel banners. You're going to see signs that Intel is investing in our local schools as well.
Community partner.
They really are. They're becoming, and some of the other companies as well, are great community partners because they want to make sure that they've not just got the workforce for tomorrow, but 10 years, 20 years, 30 years from now. And this also has a very important international aspect too. We have no guarantees that with our national defense depending so much, and peace in the world depending so much on the chips in all of our weaponry and all of our transportation systems, our infrastructure, domestically and foreign infrastructure, power systems, these chips run everything. And it's so important that we are manufacturing these on our homeland, and especially right here in Ohio. And my district, 20th Senate District, is awesome. It's going to lead, it's going to save lives in the future. It's going to prevent wars. I think the chip manufacturing here, the local economic impact is going to be not only incredible, but it's also going to, and it's going to provide livelihoods for many, many thousands of families, which is wonderful. But it's a great national defense strategy as well.
Right, and what a great sales job when Intel comes in for a career day and says, hey kids, how many of you have one of these?
Yes.
And everybody holds up one of these, and you know what's inside this? Intel, right, is inside.
Exactly.
And you can make, what a great sales pitch to young minds.
Oh, absolutely. And that's what you want. You want to encourage those kids to go find that academic program they can excel in to help make the next generation phone.
And you really put your finger on it, too, when you talk about the national security part of this whole equation. Because one thing I think that became very evident in the early days of COVID was when you have to go to China or some other country to get your PPE, for hospitals. You didn't have enough supply, and there's absolutely no reason why we aren't making things here in this country and here in Ohio. And that also sort of goes to one of the bills that was just passed on I think 30 to 1 vote maybe in the Senate, Senate Bill 226, and it talks about outlawing the sale of land within a 25-mile radius to a military installation in Ohio, to an organization or to a country or to a group of people that would be deemed as an adversary of the United States. You voted for that.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a really important piece of legislation, and my hat's off to Senator Terry Johnson for authoring it, and how important this was and is that we pass this and make this law because, and send the message to the federal government also that, the rest of the country needs to be paying attention to who's buying our land and where. Espionage, whether it's corporate espionage or military government espionage, is a very, very serious problem. And we know we have adversaries out there that are very adept at it. And when they're buying land right next to our military facilities, that's a problem. And I don't think it's coincidental at all.
No, and I know that speaking of land, farmland, same thing was outlawed, the sale of farmland to adversary organizations or countries. That was part of the budget. The right thing to do. I mean, there's a tremendous amount of farmland in Fairfield County. Correct?
You bet. Yep.
Hence the name Fairfield.
That's exactly where we got the name, was Fairfields. In the county, great agricultural fields, great agricultural facilities, and it's really just a simple question: do we want a foreign adversary who does not want to see capitalism succeed, does not want to see America succeed and prosper, owning our farms?
Yeah, General Sherman would certainly be against that.
I think he would have an opinion on that.
Yes. If he was sitting right next to us in his boyhood home right now, I'm sure he would be reading us the Riot Act about anybody that supports the sale of said land to a foreign adversary would be looked at as a traitor.
Absolutely.
Speaking of Senate Bill 267, that's a bill that you sponsored. It would hold people accountable for damage caused during a riot. And I know you took some heat for that from the political left, but from what we've seen over the last several years, really in recent history, it seems like these aren't just protesters that are protesting because they don't like it and they just wanted to be there. There is a paid element now from organizations that are funding paid protesters. Why did you want to sponsor this bill?
I want to sponsor this legislation because for a couple of reasons. One is there's a component to the bill that supports our law enforcement community. It supports our police. And that part of the bill says the civilian authority shall not interfere with police orders or police techniques when they're executing their job in a riot. In other words, the politicians aren't going to be able to tell the police to stand down when they're trying to control a riot and protect a neighborhood and protect citizens, number one. Number two, as you pointed out, we're going to make those rioters, especially we're going to be hauling in some paid rioters from out of town who don't even know where they're at, but they're just paid to be here to throw bricks and
many
yell
of them
and
want to
scream.
be many of them want to be arrested because they
want to be arrested,
and they're turned loose an hour later.
And so when they're arrested and if we can get a conviction on them or a plea, then we can have that property owner, be it government or a private sector property owner, send them a bill through the courts and require them to pay for the destruction that they've done. And this is really important because at that point, and here's the real logic behind the bill. It's not expressly written in the bill because the bill sets out the legal parameters. But the cool thing about this is then you can start tracing back who paid for that person to be here. Who's paying the bill? Who paid for that big truckload of water on the corner of of Broad and High? And who paid for the frozen water bottles and things like that? It starts to give us a roadmap to go back to who's really paying for this riot. And nobody should be paying for a riot. There should be no riot in the first place. And my friends on the left, they're afraid that we're going to try and shut down the First Amendment. Ridiculous. We're not shutting down that. We are preserving the First Amendment because it's a property owner or someone who's injured, their right to protest their destruction or their injury as much as anyone else's right to protest a government action. So we want it to be safe. We want the protest to be safe and civil, vocal, not physical.
Right. And you see this in public places or public buildings damaged, but also you're starting to see that same element protesting in front of what I would consider critical infrastructure. We see people blocking even highways now, and so it is reaching a level to where a message needs to be sent.
It really is. And, one injury is one injury too many to the general innocent citizens, the general public. And we want to make sure that those who are perpetrating these crimes are held accountable and paying for the damage. And this bill will be a huge step in that direction to coordinate all these disparate factors that currently you might find pieces and parts in current law, but they're all disparate and they don't pull together. This bill pulls them together.
State Senator Tim Schaffer, thanks so much for having us into the Sherman House today. What a wonderful place of Ohio history that's preserved through many of the actions that you've taken to provide capital funding to organizations like
Thank you.
this.
Thank you so much.
So if you're taking a one-day road trip, a one-day trip around Ohio, take the kids, and you're going to be in Fairfield County or just south of Columbus, come right down to the Sherman House, where you can go on shermanhouse.org. They do tours Wednesday through Sunday. Tours start at noon, and the final tour every hour on the hour. The final tour ends at 3 o'clock. And you can see General William Tecumseh Sherman's saber that he used during the Civil War. Thanks so much for tuning in, and we will see you soon.